I wasn't supposed to be in the lobby. That was my first mistake. The second was thinking my hospital socks could outrun a man who'd spent 3 years learning exactly how fast I could move before he caught me. The marble floor of the Celestial Grand stretched before me like a frozen lake. Beautiful, treacherous, and completely unforgiving if you fell. My reflection stared back at me, distorted in the high-polished stone. A tired black woman in catering whites, hospital socks where her sneakers should be, arms wrapped around 2 pink-patterned bakery boxes like they were the only things keeping her upright. Maybe they were. My hands trembled as I adjusted my grip, the cardboard corners digging into my palms hard enough to leave red marks. I focused on that small pain, anything to ground me, anything to keep the panic coiling in my chest from climbing up my throat and strangling me right here in front of everyone. I'd been making deliveries to the Celestial for 6 months now, custom desserts for their penthouse events, always through the service entrance, always invisible. The kitchen staff knew me. The security guards waved me through. I was safe in the corridors that smelled of industrial cleaner and the sweat of people who worked for a living. But tonight, a burst pipe in the service hallway meant I had to cross through the main lobby. Of course it did. Because when your life is held together with dental floss and prayers, the universe always finds new ways to test the knots. Before we continue with Naomi's story, if you're already hooked by what happens when a single mother fleeing her abusive ex collides with the most dangerous man in the city, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel brings you powerful stories about women who refuse to stay broken, men who redefine what protection means, and the complicated, beautiful truth that sometimes survival means standing still instead of running. New chapters drop weekly, and trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when Naomi realizes that the man in the elevator isn't just powerful, he's untouchable. Like this video if you're ready to see a woman reclaim her power, and share it with anyone who needs to remember that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about refusing to let fear make your decisions. Now, let's get back to that lobby. Because Naomi's about to hear the voice that's haunted her nightmares for 6 months. The lobby stretched ahead of me like a gauntlet. 32 steps to the elevators. I'd counted them the one other time I'd been forced through here. Soaring ceilings that made me feel ant-small. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than my annual rent, throwing light around like they had money to burn. The air smelled like it cost $500 a bottle. Expensive cologne, imported leather, fresh orchids from the massive arrangement on the center table. My footsteps, silent in these stupid hospital socks because I'd left my sneakers in the catering van, soaked through from the rain, barely registered on that perfect floor. 32 steps. I could manage 32 steps. I'd survived a marriage. I'd birthed a 9-pound baby without epidural because the hospital was too busy to get to me in time. I'd worked 3 jobs simultaneously while finishing my business certification online. 32 steps was nothing. 28 steps left. My son's face flickered through my mind. Marcus, 7 years old, gap-toothed smile, currently at my neighbor's apartment doing homework and waiting for mommy to come home with the good pastries from work, the ones that didn't sell and that the hotel let me take. He was waiting for our nightly ritual, hot chocolate, Batman cartoons, and him telling me about his day while I pretended my feet didn't feel like they were walking on broken glass. 23 steps. Almost there. Then I heard it. Naomi. My body knew before my brain caught up. My stomach dropped. My skin went cold. Every muscle seized. That voice, that familiar baritone that used to whisper sweet things and now only knew how to demand, to control, to corner. I didn't turn around. Maybe if I kept walking. Maybe if I pretended I hadn't heard. Maybe reality would bend just this once in my favor. Just this once, when I needed it most. Naomi, I know that's you. Footsteps behind me. Quick. Confident. The walk of a man who'd never been told no and meant it. My pulse hammered in my throat. I clutched the bakery boxes tighter and walked faster, my hospital socks sliding slightly on the too smooth floor. 15 steps to the elevators, just 15 more steps. "Don't you dare ignore me!" His hand clamped on my shoulder, spinning me around with enough force that I nearly dropped both boxes. The pastries inside shifted. I could hear them sliding. Could imagine the carefully piped frosting smearing, 2 hours of work ruining in real time. Derek looked exactly as he had 6 months ago when I'd finally gotten out. Tall, 6'3" to my 5'5", built like the college linebacker he'd once been, before the injuries, before the bitterness, before he'd decided that controlling me was easier than controlling anything else in his life. His smile was the same too, the one that looked charming to everyone else and predatory to me. "There's my girl," he said, like I was a lost dog he'd found. "I'm not your girl." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I haven't been for 6 months. Let go of me." 6 months. He didn't release my shoulder. His fingers pressed just hard enough, never enough to bruise. Derek was too smart for that. But enough to communicate ownership. 6 months since you abandoned our marriage. Since you took my son, and moved into that roach trap above the bakery. His voice stayed calm, reasonable. The tone he used when he wanted witnesses to think I was the unreasonable one. 6 months since you refused to answer my calls, blocked my number, ignored every attempt I made to fix our family. Our family was broken before I left. I tried to step back. His grip tightened. And Marcus is fine. He's happy. We're both happy. Happy. The word came out flat, dangerous. You look exhausted, Naomi. You look like you're barely holding it together. Is this what you wanted? To work yourself to death playing single mother when you could come home? When I've been asking you to come home? The thing about Derek was that he could make generosity sound like a threat. Around us, the lobby continued its expensive hum. A couple in evening wear walked past, their eyes sliding over us like we were furniture. A bellhop pushed a cart of designer luggage, carefully looking anywhere but at us. The concierge behind the desk suddenly found something fascinating on her computer screen. Everyone knew. Everyone saw. No one would help. That was the thing about violence that didn't leave marks. It happened in plain sight, and people still called it a domestic issue and kept walking. "I have a delivery to make," I said, focusing on keeping my voice level. "I'm on the clock. I need to go." "One conversation, Naomi. That's all I'm asking for." His thumb pressed into the hollow of my collarbone. Not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to remind me he could. 30 minutes. We'll get coffee downstairs. We'll talk like adults. And then you can make your delivery. I don't want to talk. What you want stopped mattering when you walked out on our marriage without a real conversation. "I left you a letter." "A letter." His laugh was sharp, bitter, designed to cut. 3 years of marriage, and you gave me a letter. Do you know how that made me look? To my family? To our friends? Our friends, as if I'd been allowed to keep any of my own. "I explained everything in that letter," I said. "There's nothing else to say." "There's plenty to say." His other hand reached for the bakery boxes. "Starting with the fact that you're killing yourself trying to prove some point about independence when you should be home where you belong. When Marcus should be home with both his parents." My vision narrowed. The lobby, the chandeliers, the orchids, the expensive people in their expensive clothes, faded to background noise. All I could see was his hand reaching for the boxes, for the only proof I'd made it through my shift, for the only thing standing between me and another night of Marcus eating cereal for dinner because Mommy couldn't afford groceries until Friday. The boxes wobbled. I jerked back, but his grip on my shoulder held firm. "You're going to make me drop these," I said, hating the pleading note creeping into my voice. "They're worth $300. I can't afford to replace them." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you humiliated me." The words hit like a slap. There it is, I thought. There's the real issue. Not that I was hurt. Not that our marriage had become a cage where I'd lost myself piece by piece, shrinking down until I was nothing but what he wanted me to be. Not that I'd woken up one morning unable to remember the last time I'd smiled without permission or spoken without calculating his reaction first. No. The real issue was that he was humiliated. Something inside me cracked. Maybe it was exhaustion. I'd been awake since 4 a.m. to prep for the morning rush at the catering company. Maybe it was fear, knowing that if I lost this contract, I'd lose the apartment, lose the childcare, lose the fragile stability I'd built for Marcus. Maybe it was rage, 3 years of swallowed anger finally finding its voice. Whatever it was, it made me brave. Or stupid. Probably both. "Let go of me." My voice cut through the lobby hum, sharp. Loud enough that the couple in evening wear actually paused. Loud enough that the concierge looked up. Derek's expression shifted. His jaw tightened. The charming mask slipped for just a second, and underneath it was something cold and calculating and entirely familiar. "We're making a scene, Naomi." His voice dropped lower, more controlled. "You hate scenes. Just come sit down with me for 30 minutes. I twisted sharply, using the self-defense move Keisha had taught me. Bless her, my best friend and the only person who'd understood why I needed to learn how to break free from a grip that looked gentle from the outside. The boxes lurched dangerously, but I steadied them, my heart slamming against my ribs as I spun away. "Naomi!" His shout echoed through the lobby. I didn't look back. I ran. Hospital socks sliding on marble, boxes clutched to my chest. I ran for those elevator doors like they were the only salvation left in the world. 10 steps. 5. I slammed my hand against the call button. Once. Twice. 3 times. Behind me, his footsteps. Behind me, his voice calling my name like a command. The elevator chimed. The doors slid open. I threw myself forward without looking, desperate only to be anywhere he wasn't, to have metal doors between us, to have one moment where I could breathe without his presence filling all the air. I collided with something solid. The boxes tilted, began their inevitable fall. Strong hands caught them, not grabbed, caught. Plucked them from my arms with startling precision, steadying them before a single pastry could be disturbed. I stumbled backward, looking up. The man inside the elevator didn't move, didn't flinch, didn't react like someone who'd just been body-checked by a desperate woman in hospital socks. He was tall, taller even than Derek, with shoulders that seemed to take up the entire elevator car. His suit was charcoal gray, cut so precisely it looked like it had been sewn onto his body. His white shirt was open at the collar, and I caught a glimpse of ink, intricate, dark, climbing up his throat from beneath the fabric. But it was his face that stopped my breath. Sharp. Severe. All hard angles and clean lines that should have been cold, but instead held something magnetic, something that made the air feel suddenly heavier. His eyes were dark, so dark they looked black in the amber elevator light. And when they met mine, I felt pinned, assessed, seen in a way that made my skin prickle with awareness. "I'm sorry," I gasped, reaching for the boxes. I didn't see. I wasn't looking. Naomi, get back here. Derek's voice shattered the moment. Without thinking, I lunged fully into the elevator, my body moving on pure instinct. The stranger stepped aside, still holding my boxes with surprising care for someone who looked like he'd never touched anything fragile in his life. Please! The word came out broken, desperate. I hated the sound of it. Please, I need... The stranger's gaze flicked past me, to Derek, now only feet away. Something shifted in the stranger's expression. Something dark and cold and completely controlled. Then his hand moved, long fingers pressing the button to close the doors. Wait! Derek lunged forward, his hand shooting out to catch the closing doors. The stranger shifted. Not much. Just a slight repositioning of his body, but suddenly he filled the entire doorway. Immovable, imposing, a wall of tailored charcoal and silent threat. Derek's hand stopped inches from the doors. The doors slid shut. Through the narrowing gap, I caught one last glimpse of Derek's face, confusion giving way to rage, his mouth moving in words I couldn't hear and didn't want to. The elevator lurched into motion. I sagged against the back wall, my legs suddenly unable to support me. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. My breath came in short, sharp gasps that sounded too loud in the small space. I'd done it. I'd actually escaped. For now, anyway. The stranger handed me back my boxes with the same careful precision he'd caught them with, like they were artifacts instead of buttercream and fondant. Thank you, I whispered. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he studied me, really studied me, not the way Derek did, looking for weaknesses to exploit, but like he was reading a document in a language only he understood. He saw my shaking hands, the exhaustion carved into my face, the way I stood like I expected the walls themselves to turn on me. You're bleeding, he said. His voice was low, accented, Korean, I thought, though I wasn't sure, and completely controlled. I glanced down. A thin scrape on my ankle, probably from when I'd run, a small streak of red against my dark skin. It's nothing, I said automatically. That's what people say when it's something. Before I could respond, the elevator jerked. The lights flickered, once, twice, then settled into an amber emergency glow. The elevator stopped moving. My stomach dropped. No. The word came out strangled. No, no, no. The stranger remained infuriatingly calm. He pressed the emergency call button. Nothing. He pulled out his phone, checked the screen, and slipped it back into his pocket. We're stuck, I said, panic clawing up my throat. We're stuck, and he's down there. And when these doors open? When these doors open, the stranger said quietly, he won't touch you. The certainty in his voice made me look up. He was leaning against the elevator wall now, arms crossed, studying me with that same intense focus. You don't understand, I said. You don't know him? I know men like him. His tone was flat, factual. Men who think fear makes them powerful. Something about the way he said it, like he was categorizing a species, not expressing an opinion, made my pulse stutter. I'm Naomi, I said, because silence felt more dangerous than talking. And I was just trying to get home to my son. That got his attention. Something shifted in his expression, not softening exactly, but focusing. "Your ex?" he asked. I nodded. He doesn't like that I left. Men like him rarely do. The elevator jolted again. I gasped, grabbing for the railing. Before I could register what was happening, the stranger moved. One hand braced against the wall near my head, his body angled in front of mine, creating a barrier between me and the doors. He didn't touch me. He didn't need to. The scent of expensive cologne and something darker, leather, maybe, or smoke, filled the small space. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly. "But I will hurt him if he tries again." I swallowed. "You can't just—" "I can." His dark eyes held mine. "And I will." There was no bragging in his tone, no threat, just fact, delivered with the same casual certainty as stating the weather. I should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time in months, maybe years, my shoulders relaxed. "What's your name?" I asked. "June." Just June. No last name, no explanation. The lights flickered again, and this time the elevator lurched back into motion. When the doors opened on the executive floor, a man in a black suit was waiting. His posture straightened instantly when he saw June, his expression shifting from concern to something like reverence. "Hyung," he said quickly. June nodded once. "Make sure she gets home safely," he said, gesturing toward me. "And that the man downstairs forgets her name." My breath caught. "That's not—" I started. "You can't—" June looked at me then, really looked at me. "You ran because you were afraid," he said. "You don't have to run anymore." I should have argued, should have insisted I didn't need help, didn't need saving, didn't need anything from a stranger who'd probably forget my name by tomorrow. Instead, I whispered, "I have a son." His gaze softened, just a fraction. "So do I," he said, "which is why I don't tolerate men who think fear makes them powerful." The man in the black suit opened the door wider. "Ms. Naomi?" he said with unexpected respect. "This way, please." I hesitated, looking back at June. He hadn't moved. Still leaning against the elevator wall, arms crossed, watching me with those impossibly dark eyes. "This doesn't mean I belong to you," I said. His expression didn't change. "No," he agreed. "It means you're under my protection." Protection, not ownership, not control. The distinction mattered. It mattered more than he could possibly know. As I stepped out of the elevator, clutching my bakery boxes like anchors, I felt it, deep in my chest, like tectonic plates shifting. My life had just tilted onto a different axis. Somewhere below us, Derek was still standing in that lobby, unaware that the world had shifted out from under his feet. And I, single mom, exhausted, wearing hospital socks in a luxury hotel, had just crossed paths with the most dangerous man in the building. Not because I was weak, but because I was finally done running. But I'm getting ahead of myself. To understand how I ended up in that elevator, how a single mother from the South Side became tangled in the orbit of a man whose name made powerful people nervous, you need to understand what came before. You need to understand the girl I used to be, before Derek, before Marcus, before I learned that sometimes the most dangerous prisons are the ones you build yourself. You need to understand how I got here. So let me take you back. But in the elevator, there was no past, only the present. amber emergency lights casting shadows across the face of the man who'd just saved me without asking why I needed saving. I studied June the way you study a wild animal you've accidentally cornered, carefully, trying not to make any sudden movements that might change the nature of the moment. His suit was charcoal grays, the kind that costs more than 3 months of my rent. It fit him the way skin fits bone, perfectly, inevitably. The fabric moved when he moved, never pulling, never bunching. Under the emergency lights, I could see the fine texture of it, expensive wool that probably came from sheep in countries I'd never visit. But it was the tattoos that caught my attention. Black ink climbed up his throat from beneath his collar, intricate patterns that looked like they meant something, told a story in a language I couldn't read. Dragons, maybe, or something older. The lines disappeared into his hairline, suggesting they went much further than what I could see. Derek had always called tattoos trashy. Had told me I'd look cheap if I ever got the small butterfly I'd wanted on my shoulder blade. Nothing about June looked cheap. He stood with the kind of stillness that comes from absolute certainty. No fidgeting, no checking his phone, no awkward shifting of weight. Just calm, controlled presence that made the already small elevator feel even smaller. Most people would be panicking right now. Stuck elevator, no cell signal, emergency lights. This was the beginning of a news story about a rescue that takes hours. June looked like he was waiting for a bus that was only slightly delayed. "You saw him," I said, breaking the silence because I needed to know. "My ex. You saw him, and you just knew." "Yes." Just yes. No elaboration. No questions about what Derek had done, what our history was, whether I was exaggerating or being dramatic, or any of the 1,000 things people usually asked when they saw a situation like that. He'd simply assessed, decided, and acted. "How?" I asked. June's gaze slid to me, those dark eyes unreadable. "Body language," he said. "His, yours. The way you moved, like you were calculating escape routes before you'd even looked for exits. The way he grabbed you, familiar, entitled, like he'd done it 1,000 times before." My throat tightened. He had done it 1,000 times before. "You didn't ask if I wanted help," I said quietly. "You just helped." "Would you have said yes if I'd asked?" "No. That's why I didn't ask." The logic was infuriating. It was also completely accurate. Something beeped overhead, probably the emergency system trying and failing to connect. The elevator shifted slightly, settling deeper into whatever position it had locked into between floors. I gripped the bakery boxes tighter, needing something solid to hold on to. June noticed. Of course he noticed. "Your ankle," he said. "You should sit." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding. You're standing in hospital socks on a metal floor. You've just run from a man who clearly has practice cornering you." He gestured to the floor. "Sit. The boxes will keep." It wasn't a command, not quite, but it carried the weight of someone who expected to be obeyed, not because of authority, but because of inevitability. I slid down the wall, settling onto the floor with the boxes in my lap. My legs were shaking anyway. Sitting felt like admitting weakness, but standing felt like lying. June remained where he was, standing, watching. "You're not scared," I said, looking up at him. "We're stuck in an elevator, no phone signal, and you're not even slightly concerned." "No." "Why not?" "Because elevators don't scare me." His voice was level now. Factual. "Men who grab women in hotel lobbies do." The distinction hung in the air between us. Who are you? I asked. Really? His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Calculation, decision-making, the weighing of how much truth to tell a stranger bleeding on an elevator floor. Someone who doesn't tolerate bullies, he said finally, especially ones who put their hands on women who are just trying to get home to their children. It wasn't an answer, not really. But somehow, in the amber emergency light, with my heart still racing and his expensive suit casting shadows on the wall, it was enough. The elevator groaned softly, settling deeper. Outside these metal walls, Derek was probably raging at the concierge desk, demanding to know where I'd gone, insisting they call the elevator down, making a scene because he'd been denied what he considered his right. In here, there was only silence, only stillness, only a stranger who'd stepped between me and danger without hesitation, without question, without asking for anything in return. I should have been terrified, trapped in a small space with a man I didn't know, a man whose tattoos suggested a life I couldn't imagine, a man who moved with the kind of dangerous grace that came from knowing exactly how much damage he could do and choosing not to. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Safe. For the first time since the elevator doors had closed, I let myself exhale fully. I'm Naomi, I said into the silence. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted it to. Naomi Carter. I have a son, Marcus. He's 7. I don't know why I added that last part. Maybe because it was the most important thing about me. Maybe because I needed this stranger to understand that someone was waiting for me, that I couldn't just disappear into an elevator shaft and leave my baby alone in the world. June's attention shifted. Not his body, but something behind his eyes. A sharpening, a focusing. How old? He asked. 7? I heard you. He tilted his head slightly. A good age. Old enough to understand some things. Young enough to still believe his mother can protect him from everything. The way he said it, like he knew, like he'd lived it, made my chest tighten. Can she? I asked. Protect him from everything? No. His answer was immediate, honest. But she can try. That's what matters. Something about the admission, the lack of platitudes, the refusal to offer false comfort, steadied me more than reassurance ever could. That's why you helped me, I said, understanding settling over me like a blanket. Not just because Derek grabbed me, because you saw what would happen next. He was escalating. June's tone remained neutral, clinical. The grip on your shoulder, the position of his body, the way he was herding you toward the bar. He wasn't planning to let you leave without getting what he wanted. What he wanted was control. Control through fear. Something dark passed across June's face. There are many types of power in this world. Fear is the weapon of weak men who have nothing else to offer. The conviction in his voice wasn't anger. It was something colder, absolute certainty carved into stone. You've seen it before, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes. And you? What? Make it stop? His eyes met mine. When I can. The elevator jolted suddenly, a sharp drop of maybe 6 inches before the emergency brake caught. The boxes flew from my lap. My hands shot out, grasping for anything solid. June moved. One moment he was standing near the doors. The next, he was there. One hand braced against the wall above my head, the other against the wall beside me, his body forming a cage that would catch me if the elevator dropped again. He didn't touch me. His suit jacket brushed my shoulder. His cologne, expensive, subtle, something with cedar and smoke, filled my senses. I could see the pulse in his throat, steady and calm despite the adrenaline that had to be flooding his system. But he didn't touch me. The elevator settled. The emergency lights flickered but held. June didn't move immediately. He stayed there, suspended over me, those dark eyes scanning my face like he was checking for injuries, for fear, for cracks in the foundation. "You're okay," he said. Not a question, an assessment. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Only then did he push back, returning to his position near the doors like nothing had happened. But something had happened. In that split second of crisis, his instinct hadn't been to save himself. It had been to shield me, to put his body between me and potential harm without thought, without hesitation, without expecting anything in return. Derek would have used me as a cushion. This stranger had made himself my cushion instead. "You do this a lot?" I asked, my voice shakier than I wanted. "Save random women in elevators?" "No." "Then why?" "Because no one else was going to." He said it simply, like it explained everything. Maybe it did. Because I saw what I saw, and I made a choice. Just like that. Just like that. The silence stretched between us, but it felt different now. Less awkward, more companionable, like we were two soldiers in a foxhole, waiting for orders that might never come. "You never told me your name," I said. He hesitated, the first real hesitation I'd seen from him since the doors closed. "June," he said finally. I waited for more. A last name, an explanation, something. Nothing came. "Just June?" I asked. "Just June." The elevator shuddered once more, then lurched upward with a mechanical groan that sounded almost relieved. The emergency lights flickered off, replaced by the normal amber glow. The floor numbers began ticking upward on the display. We were moving again. Relief should have flooded through me. I should have been thinking about Marcus, about getting these boxes delivered, about getting home before Mrs. Chen charged me overtime for babysitting. Instead, I found myself thinking that when these doors opened, June would walk out of my life as quickly as he'd entered it. And somehow, that felt like a loss. He must have seen something in my expression because his mouth, which hadn't smiled once this entire time, softened just slightly at the edges. "This isn't over," he said quietly. "What isn't?" "Whatever made you run into this elevator?" His eyes held mine. "Men like your ex don't stop because they lost one battle. They escalate." My stomach dropped in a way that had nothing to do with the elevator's movement. "I know," I whispered. "Good." June straightened his already perfect suit jacket. "Then you won't be surprised when I make sure he understands the consequences of trying again." The doors began to slow. The penthouse floor was approaching. And I realized, with a clarity that felt like lightning striking, that my life had just divided into before and after this moment. Before June. After June. The elevator chimed softly, announcing our arrival. The doors opened. A man stood waiting in the hallway. He was younger than June, maybe late 20s, dressed in a black suit that looked expensive, but not quite as expensive as June's. His posture was relaxed until his eyes landed on June. Then everything changed. His spine straightened, his shoulders squared, his entire body language shifted from casual to attentive in the space of a heartbeat. "Hyung," he said quickly, the Korean word rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. June nodded once, a small movement that somehow conveyed acknowledgement, command, and dismissal all at once. The younger man's eyes flicked to me, taking in my catering whites, my hospital socks, the bakery boxes I clutched like life rafts. His expression didn't change, but I saw the calculation happening behind his eyes, assessing, cataloging, deciding what my presence meant. "Make sure she gets home safely," June said. His voice carried the same level tone he'd used in the elevator. But there was steel underneath now, authority that didn't need to be loud to be absolute. "And make sure the man downstairs forgets her name." My breath caught. "Wait," I started. The younger man bowed slightly. "Of course, young. I'll handle it personally." "That's not—" I turned to June, my hands tightening on the boxes. "You can't just—" "I can," June said simply. "No." The word came out firmer than I expected. "No, you can't just decide things for me, give orders about my life like I'm some kind of property," June finished quietly. The word hung in the air between us. "Yes," I said, lifting my chin. "Like property. I didn't ask you to handle Derek. I didn't ask you to send people to do whatever it is you're planning to do. I'm not yours to protect." Something flickered across June's face. Not anger, not irritation, something that looked almost like approval? "No," he agreed. "You're not mine." He took a step forward, not threatening, just closing the distance enough that I had to look up to meet his eyes. "Protection is not possession, Naomi." His voice was quiet, measured, but each word landed with weight. "I'm not claiming you. I'm not controlling you. I'm not making you mine. I'm simply ensuring that a man who put his hands on you understands that there are consequences for his actions. I can handle Derek myself. Can you?" The question wasn't mocking. It was genuine. "Can you handle him when he follows you home? When he waits outside your apartment? When he shows up at your son's school?" June's eyes held mine. "Because men like him don't stop. They don't accept boundaries. They escalate until someone makes them stop." My throat tightened because he was right. I knew he was right. I'd seen the pattern before. The flowers that became phone calls, that became showing up at my work, that became cornering me in parking lots. "So what?" I asked, hating the tremor in my voice. "You're just going to— what? Make him disappear? Threaten him? I don't even know you. I don't know what you're capable of." "Good," June said. "You shouldn't trust me. You shouldn't trust any man who offers you protection without proving he deserves that trust." He paused. "But tonight, right now, you have a choice. You can walk out of this building hoping your ex has given up. Or you can accept that I'm offering you a shield you don't have to carry yourself." "Why?" The question burst out of me. "Why do you even care? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." For the first time, something softened in his expression. Not pity, something more complicated. "Because someone should have protected my mother when she needed it," he said quietly. "And no one did." The words settled over me like ash. This wasn't about me at all. This was about ghosts I couldn't see, wounds I couldn't name, a history written in the language of his tattoos and the steel in his voice. The younger man cleared his throat gently. "Ms. Carter, I can have a car ready in 5 minutes. Your delivery can be completed, and I'll ensure you arrive home safely." I looked at June, really looked at him. He wasn't trying to own me. He was offering me something I hadn't had in years. The ability to walk through the world without calculating every exit, without checking over my shoulder, without making myself small enough to avoid being targeted. He was offering me space to breathe. "This doesn't mean I belong to you," I said, echoing the words I'd used in the elevator. June's mouth curved, not quite a smile, but close. "No," he agreed. "It means you're under my protection. The distinction matters." It did matter. It mattered more than anything. I nodded slowly. Okay. 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 I gestured vaguely with the boxes. "I'll accept the ride home." June nodded once, then turned to his subordinate. "June, make sure nothing happens to her." "Yes, Hyung." As I stepped past June into the hallway, I felt his presence at my back, solid, certain, protective without being possessive. I didn't look back, but I knew, with bone-deep certainty, that everything had changed. I'd walked into that elevator running from a man who wanted to own me. I was walking out under the protection of a man who wanted nothing from me at all. And somehow, that was infinitely more dangerous. June drove a black sedan that probably cost more than my entire apartment building. He didn't make conversation during the drive, didn't ask questions, didn't comment on the neighborhood when we pulled up to the weathered brownstone where I rented the second-floor walk-up above Chen's Bakery. He simply ensured I made it to my door, waited until I was inside, and disappeared into the night. Marcus was asleep on Mrs. Chen's couch, his small body curled around his battered Captain America toy. She waved off my apologies about being late, refused the extra 20 I tried to give her, and told me, with a pointed look, that a nice man called to settle your account for the month. I didn't ask which nice man. I already knew. The next morning, Derek's number was blocked on my phone. Not by me. I'd already blocked him 6 months ago. But when I checked, there were no missed calls, no voicemails, no text messages waiting to be downloaded from some server. It was like he'd never had my number at all. The threatening emails stopped. The flowers that had been appearing at the catering company's back entrance, always lilies, always with cards that said things like, "I forgive you," and "Come home," vanished. My manager, who'd been sympathetic but unhelpful about the harassment, suddenly greeted me by name, asked if I needed anything, mentioned that the company was considering promoting me to lead pastry chef. When I picked Marcus up from school that afternoon, the principal, who'd never spoken to me before, stopped me to say they'd updated their pickup authorization list and increased security protocols. "Just being cautious," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt like I was standing on a stage where someone had rewritten the script without telling me. That night, after Marcus was asleep, I did what I should have done immediately. I Googled June. The problem was, I didn't have a last name. Just June, and Korean, and hotel, and real estate. Because June's car had a parking placard for a property management company. It took 3 hours and 6 different search combinations before I found him. Park June, CEO, Hanseong International Holdings. The photo was professional, suit, tie, face arranged in an expression of corporate neutrality. But I'd recognize those eyes anywhere. That particular quality of stillness that suggested coiled power waiting for direction. Real estate empire, commercial properties across 3 continents. Net worth that made my brain hurt trying to comprehend the zeros. And underneath the glossy press releases and business profiles, there were other stories. Whispers in forums and Reddit threads and deleted articles that had been archived by people who remembered. Connections to organized crime. Suspected ties to Korean American gangs. Multiple investigations, 0 convictions. Untouchable. That word kept appearing, over and over, in different contexts, different sources. Untouchable. Not because he was innocent, but because he was powerful enough that innocence didn't matter. I closed my laptop, feeling like I'd swallowed glass. The man who'd protected me was dangerous. Not just powerful, dangerous. The kind of dangerous that made prosecutors drop cases. The kind of dangerous that made problems disappear. The kind of dangerous that had made Derek disappear. I should have been terrified. I was terrified. But underneath the fear was something else, something that felt uncomfortably like relief, like gratitude, like the first full breath I'd taken in years. My phone buzzed 3 days later. Unknown number. This is June. I'd like to speak with you. No obligation, no pressure, just clarity. My hands shook as I typed. When? Whenever you're ready. I stared at the screen for a long time. Marcus was at school. My shift didn't start until evening. I could ignore this. Block the number. Pretend the elevator had never happened and go back to my carefully constructed life of invisibility and survival. Or I could get answers. I typed, today, 2 p.m., public place. Address? I sent him the location of a coffee shop 3 blocks from my apartment. Busy, well lit, lots of witnesses. Safe. His response was immediate. I'll be there. I put the phone down and stared at my reflection in the dark screen. 5 days ago, I'd been running from a man who wanted to own me. Now I was walking toward a man who might be infinitely more dangerous. Not because he wanted to control me, but because he already had the power to reshape my entire world with a single phone call. The difference was, I was choosing to walk toward him. That had to mean something. I just wasn't sure if it meant I was brave or foolish. Maybe both. Probably both. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. Clarity, he'd promised. Clarity was exactly what I needed, even if I wasn't sure I'd survive what it revealed. The coffee shop was wrong. I knew it the moment I walked in and saw June sitting in the corner booth, looking like a panther that had wandered into a petting zoo. His charcoal suit, different from the elevator, but equally expensive, made the worn vinyl seats look even more threadbare. The other customers kept glancing at him, then away, like their instincts knew he didn't belong here even if their conscious minds couldn't explain why. He stood when he saw me, not performatively, not making a show of it, just rising smoothly, a gesture so automatic it seemed coded into his DNA. This isn't right, he said before I could sit. Come with me. Excuse me? This place. He gestured at the fluorescent lights, the cracked laminate tables. You chose it because you thought you needed witnesses. You don't. Not with me. My spine stiffened. I chose it because I wanted neutral ground. Then let me offer you actual neutral ground. His dark eyes held mine. My restaurant, 2 blocks from here. Private room. Exit routes you control. Staff who won't eavesdrop. Your restaurant? Yes. I should have refused, should have insisted on my choice, my terms, my control of the situation. Instead, I heard myself say, lead the way. The restaurant was called Hanseong. Elegant Korean characters above the door, minimalist interior that probably cost more than most people's houses. The host took one look at June and immediately guided us past the main dining room to a private space in the back. Sliding doors. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a garden that shouldn't exist in this neighborhood. A low table with cushioned seating that managed to be both traditional and impossibly comfortable. June waited until I was settled before sitting across from me. "You researched me," he said. Not a question. "Yes. And you came anyway." "I want clarity." I kept my voice steady. "You made my ex-husband disappear from my life in less than 72 hours. I want to know what that cost, what I owe you." "Nothing." "Nothing?" "Nothing." June leaned back slightly. "Your ex-husband is a small man with small power, the kind who mistakes cruelty for strength. Discouraging men like him requires very little actual effort, just the appearance of larger power standing behind their target." "So what, you just scared him?" "I made it clear that pursuing you would be more costly than letting you go." His tone remained neutral, factual. "Men like Derek are pragmatists. They find easier targets." The casual efficiency of it made my skin prickle. "And that's it? He's just gone?" "For now." June's gaze sharpened. "But men like him are also persistent. They wait. They watch. They convince themselves that whatever deterrent existed has faded, that they can try again." My stomach tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that fear fades. Visibility doesn't." He paused, choosing words carefully. "I'm proposing a temporary arrangement. You allow yourself to be seen with me, in public, at events, enough that anyone paying attention understands there's an association." "An association?" The word tasted bitter. "You mean people thinking I'm yours?" "People thinking you're under protection," June corrected. "The distinction matters." "Does it?" I leaned forward, letting him see the steel underneath my exhaustion. "Because from where I'm sitting, you're asking me to trade one man's control for another man's protection. Same cage, prettier bars." "No." The word came out sharp. The first real emotion I'd heard from him. "I don't want control over your life, Naomi. I want to create space where you can live it without constantly calculating threat levels." "By making me visible as what? Your woman? Your project?" "As someone under my protection." His eyes held mine. "I attend charity galas, restaurant openings, real estate events. You would accompany me. Be seen. Let the association establish itself in people's minds. Your ex-husband, and anyone else considering you vulnerable, would see that touching you means dealing with me. And in exchange? Nothing." He said it simply. "No control over your private life. No claims on your time beyond agreed-upon appearances. No debt." I laughed. Sharp, bitter. "Men don't give things without expecting payment." "I'm not giving you anything," June said quietly. "I'm offering a trade. You give me visibility. Someone at my side who's real, not calculated. I give you the kind of protection that lets you stop running. I have a son." The words came out harder than intended. "A 7-year-old boy who's my entire world. If this arrangement puts him at risk, it won't." "You can't promise that." "No," June agreed. "But I can promise that he's safer with you under visible protection than vulnerable and alone. And I can promise that the moment you say stop, it stops. No negotiation, No persuasion, just done. The certainty in his voice made something in my chest loosen. Boundaries, I said. Clear ones. Whatever you need. And the moment I say I'm done, you're done. He spread his hands. No consequences, no retaliation. Just mutual respect and parted ways. I studied him, this dangerous man offering something that looked suspiciously like freedom. Why me? I asked. You could find someone more suitable. Because you ran from a man who wanted to own you, June said simply. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. The silence stretched between us, heavy with possibility and risk. Finally, I nodded. Okay, but on my terms. Agreed. Starting with you never, ever, making decisions about my life without asking me first. Something that might have been a smile touched his mouth. Understood. I extended my hand across the table. June took it, his grip warm, firm, but not possessive. Then we have an arrangement, I said. We do. I should have felt trapped. Instead, for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally stand still without running, and that terrified me more than anything. The gala was everything I'd feared and nothing I'd expected. June had sent a dress, midnight blue silk, that moved like water, elegant without being ostentatious. No jewelry, no instructions, just a note. Be yourself. That's enough. I'd almost laughed. Myself was a single mother who smelled like buttercream and lived above a bakery. Myself didn't belong in ballrooms, but I'd put on the dress anyway. Now, standing beside June in the grand hall of the Metropolitan Club, I understood what he'd meant by visibility. Every eye in the room had cataloged my presence within the first 10 minutes. I felt their gazes like physical touches, assessing, calculating, filing away the information that Park June had arrived with someone black, someone unknown, someone who clearly didn't belong to their world of old money and older power. June's hand rested lightly on the small of my back. Not possessive, guiding. Making it clear we were together without making me property. They're staring, I murmured. Good. His voice was low, meant only for me. Let them look. Let them remember. A man approached. Silver-haired, expensive suit, smile that didn't reach his eyes. He spoke to June in rapid Korean, his gaze flicking to me periodically like I was a curiosity he couldn't quite categorize. June's response was brief, cold. The man's smile tightened before he retreated. What did he say? I asked. Nothing worth translating. June's jaw was tight. He was being disrespectful. It's handled. But it wasn't handled. I felt the shift in the room's energy. The way conversations paused when we passed. The way certain groups closed ranks, their body language screaming exclusion louder than words ever could. I wasn't just visible. I was marked. The first warning came 3 days later. I was leaving the catering company after my shift when a black SUV pulled alongside me. The window rolled down, revealing a woman in her 50s with a face like carved ice. Ms. Carter. Not a question. A word. Every instinct screamed run. Instead, I stopped. Who are you? Someone with your son's best interests at heart. She smiled, and it was the most threatening thing I'd ever seen. Marcus, isn't it? 7 years old, attends PS 147? Very sweet boy. It would be unfortunate if his mother's associations complicated his life. My blood turned to ice. "Are you threatening my son?" "I'm advising you." She handed me a card through the window. "Park June has enemies, Ms. Carter. Some of us don't appreciate him expanding his territory. You've become visible. That makes you leverage." The SUV pulled away before I could respond. I stood on the sidewalk, shaking, staring at the card in my hand. Lee Min-jun, Chairman, Seoul Investment Group. I called June immediately. He arrived at my apartment within 20 minutes, followed by June and 2 other men I didn't recognize. His expression was controlled, but something dangerous burned behind his eyes. "Tell me exactly what she said." I repeated the conversation, watching his jaw tighten with each word. When I finished, the silence was deafening. "Hyung," June said quietly. "Lee Min-jun is—" "I know who he is." June's voice was deadly calm. "And he just made a mistake." "What kind of mistake?" I demanded. "The kind that puts my son at risk?" "No." June turned to me, and for the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not for himself, for me, for Marcus. The kind that ends with him understanding exactly why threatening children is the line you don't cross. "That's not good enough!" The words burst out of me. "I didn't sign up for this. I didn't agree to make my son a target. He's not a target. She knew his name. She knew his school." My hands were shaking. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Being visible doesn't protect us. It paints a bullseye on our backs." June stepped closer, his presence overwhelming in my small living room. "Listen to me. Lee Min-jun is desperate. His territory is shrinking. His allies are abandoning him. He's lashing out because he has nothing left to lose. And that's supposed to make me feel better? It's supposed to make you understand that this was inevitable." His eyes held mine. With or without me, men like Lee notice patterns. Single mothers working multiple jobs. Women without visible protection. You were always going to be vulnerable, Naomi. The only difference now is that someone is willing to stand between you and the wolves. By making me visible to the entire pack. By making it clear that touching you means going through me. Something dark and absolute crossed his face. "And no one threatens children in my city and walks away unscathed." The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it was terrifying, because I understood in that moment exactly what kind of man I'd made an arrangement with, not just dangerous, lethal. The kind who didn't just discourage threats, the kind who eliminated them. "Marcus comes first," I said, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. "Always. If staying visible puts him at risk, then we adjust." June's expression softened fractionally. "But running won't protect him, Naomi. It never does. Men like Lee find vulnerable people specifically because they know those people will run instead of fight back." "So what do I do?" The question came out broken. "Stand here and hope your protection is enough? Hope that your enemies don't decide my son is acceptable collateral damage?" "You decide." June stepped back, giving me space. "Right now, do you trust me to handle this? Or do you disappear again and spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, waiting for the next threat you can't see coming?" The choice hung between us, heavy and impossible. Disappear and live in fear, or stand beside a dangerous man and hope his protection was worth the visibility it demanded. I thought of Marcus, asleep in the next room. I thought of Derek, finally silent. I thought of that woman's cold smile and the threat wrapped in concern. And I made my choice. Handle it, I said. But if anything happens to my son, it won't. The promise was absolute. I'll make sure of it. I nodded slowly. June turned to June. Lock down the school. Personal detail on Marcus. Rotating shifts. No one gets within 50 feet without clearance. Yes, Hyung. And Lee? June's voice dropped to something arctic. Schedule a meeting. It's time he understood the cost of crossing certain lines. As June and the others left, June paused at my door. You chose to stand, he said quietly. That takes courage most people never find. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. He left, and I stood in my small apartment, listening to Marcus's soft breathing from the bedroom. I'd made my choice. Now I'd have to live with the consequences. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table, drinking coffee that had gone cold hours ago, watching the street below where one of June's men stood guard. Protecting us, or watching us. Maybe both. By the time dawn broke, I'd made a decision. I texted June. We need to talk. Now. Not your restaurant, not a public place. Somewhere honest. His response came immediately. My office, 1 hour. Come alone. Hunsung International Holdings occupied 3 floors of a downtown tower that probably had better security than most government buildings. June met me in the lobby, his expression carefully neutral as he escorted me to a private elevator that required both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. He's expecting you, June said as the doors opened directly into a penthouse office. The space was exactly what I'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, art that probably cost more than my education. Everything precise, controlled, revealing nothing about the man who occupied it. June stood at the windows, hands in his pockets, looking out over the city like a general surveying a battlefield. He turned when I entered. Naomi. No. I dropped my bag on the nearest chair. No pleasantries. No careful dancing around the truth. I need honesty, June. Real honesty. Because last night, someone threatened my son, and I need to understand exactly what world I've stepped into. Something flickered in his expression. What do you want to know? Everything. I moved closer, refusing to be intimidated by the space, by his presence, by the weight of power that saturated this room. Who you really are, what you really do, why you actually helped me that night in the elevator. Those are dangerous questions. Then give me dangerous answers. My voice didn't shake. I'm done with half-truths and protection that comes with blind spots. If I'm standing beside you, if my son is at risk because of that choice, then I deserve to know exactly what I'm standing beside. June studied me for a long moment. Then he gestured to the sitting area by the windows. Sit. This will take time. I sat. He remained standing, hands still in his pockets, silhouetted against the morning light. My father built an empire, he began, his voice steady, factual. Real estate, shipping, construction, all legitimate on paper. But in the shadows, he did what powerful men do. Made deals that bent laws, formed alliances with people who lived outside them, ensured his territory stayed his through whatever means necessary. Organized crime. Power, June corrected. Crime is what people call it when they're not the ones holding it. My father called it survival. He taught me that in our world, you either control or you're controlled. There's no middle ground. And your mother? His jaw tightened, the first crack in his composure. My mother believed there was a middle ground. She believed in kindness, in mercy, in trusting that good intentions mattered. He paused. She was wrong. When my father's rivals wanted leverage, they took her. She died believing someone would come, that her husband, with all his power, would save her. The pain in his voice was surgical, precise, and deep. He didn't, I said softly. He was too late. June's hands curled into fists. Because he didn't understand that power unused is power wasted. That threats ignored become actions. That protecting what you love means being willing to destroy what threatens it. So you became him. I became better than him. His eyes met mine. I took his empire and made it stronger. I established codes he never bothered with, lines that don't get crossed. Children, women, anyone who can't defend themselves. Those are off limits. Always. And people who cross those lines learn why they shouldn't. His voice was flat, absolute. Quickly, I absorbed this, piecing together the man before me. Not good, not evil. Something more complicated. A predator with principles, violence with purpose. Why me? I asked. That night in the elevator, why did you actually help me? Because I saw my mother in you. The admission came quietly. A woman trying to protect herself and her child. A woman calculating escape routes because no one else would stand between her and danger. I couldn't save her, but I could save you. I'm not your redemption, June. No. He moved closer, sitting across from me now. You're not, but maybe helping you is how I honor what she should have had. A world where women don't have to run, where having power means using it to protect, not to own. Pretty words from a dangerous man. They're true anyway. His gaze held mine. I can't promise you safety, Naomi. My world doesn't allow for that. But I can promise you agency, choice, the ability to stand instead of run. Even if standing means becoming a target? Even then. He leaned forward. But it has to be your choice, genuinely yours. Not made from fear or desperation, or because you think you have no other options. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm giving you an out. His voice was steady. Right now, before we face Lee, before this becomes more complicated. You can walk away. I'll ensure you and Marcus are protected, relocated if necessary, new identities if you want them. You'll never have to see me again. And if I stay? Then you stay with full knowledge of what that means. The risks, the visibility. The fact that my enemies will see you as leverage and my allies will wonder what you mean to me. He paused. But you'll also have my full protection, my resources, and my promise that anyone who threatens your son will learn exactly why that was the worst mistake of their life. I looked at him, really looked at him. This dangerous, complicated man who'd stepped between me and harm without asking for anything in return. Who was now offering me the one thing no one else ever had. Real choice, not manipulation dressed as protection. Not control wearing the mask of care. Actual, genuine choice. I'm not running, I said. Naomi, I'm not running, I repeated, stronger now. I've spent 3 years running. From Derek, from my own life, from the possibility that I deserved better than constant fear. I'm done. This won't be easy. Nothing worth having is. I leaned forward. You asked me to choose. I'm choosing. Not because I'm afraid. Not because I think you'll save me. But because for the first time in years, someone is offering me the chance to stand instead of hide. Something shifted in June's expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Then we face Lee together, he said. Together, I agreed, but on one condition. Name it. No more secrets, no more protecting me from information because you think I can't handle it. If I'm standing beside you, I stand as an equal, not as something fragile you need to shield. Agreed. He extended his hand. I took it. His grip was warm, firm, honest. We'll handle Lee this afternoon, June said. He'll come here. He'll make threats. And he'll learn exactly why threatening children in my city is the last mistake anyone makes. And then we show the world that you're not leverage. His eyes held mine. You're under my protection. And that means something. I nodded, feeling the weight of the choice settle into my bones. I wasn't running anymore. I was standing. And whatever came next, I'd face it with my eyes open. Lee Min-jun never made it to the meeting. I learned later, much later, after the dust had settled, that he'd been presented with a choice. Retire from the city entirely, liquidate his interests, and disappear into whatever comfortable exile men like him purchased with blood money. Or face the full weight of evidence that had been quietly compiled over the past decade. Tax evasion, embezzlement, connections to trafficking operations that even his allies couldn't stomach. He chose exile. June never told me the details. He simply said, one evening over dinner at my apartment while Marcus did homework at the table, Lee is no longer a concern. I didn't ask how. I'd learned there were some answers I didn't need. Derek's fate was more mundane, but no less permanent. Restraining orders that actually held weight. Legal documents that stripped his parental rights after evidence surfaced of financial abuse, harassment, stalking. His family, who'd spent 3 years telling me I was the problem, suddenly discovered they had no interest in associating with a man who'd been publicly documented as an abuser. He didn't disappear. He simply became irrelevant, which was, in its own way, more satisfying than any dramatic ending. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of Carter's Custom Confections, my kitchen, in my commercial space, with my business license on the wall and my son's artwork taped beside the health inspection certificate. The catering company had promoted me to head pastry chef. I'd worked there for 3 more months, saved every dollar, and then taken the leap I'd been too afraid to take alone. June had offered to invest. I'd refused. This needs to be mine, I'd told him. Built with my hands, my work, my choices. He'd simply nodded and said, Then I'll be your first customer. He'd been true to his word. Hansong International's corporate events, charity galas, and business dinners all featured desserts from Carter's Custom Confections. He never asked for discounts, never pulled strings. Just quietly ensured that anyone who mattered knew where to find the best pastries in the city. The clients came, word spread. Within 4 months, I'd hired 2 part-time assistants and was considering a second location. Marcus had his own bedroom now, in an apartment that didn't smell like industrial yeast. He'd joined the soccer team at school, made friends, started smiling again without that careful calculation of whether joy was safe. And me? I'd forgotten what it felt like to check over my shoulder every time I left a building. The invitation arrived on heavy cardstock, embossed with gold lettering. Hansung International Holdings cordially invites you to the annual charity gala at the Celestial Grand Hotel. I stared at the address, feeling ghosts whisper at the edges of my memory. The Celestial Grand, where it had all begun. Where I'd run through a lobby in hospital socks, clutching bakery boxes like they were the only solid things in my world. June had noticed my hesitation when I mentioned the location. "We can change venues," he'd offered quietly. No. I'd squared my shoulders. "I want to go back. I need to go back." "Why?" "Because I need to walk through that lobby again. Head high. On my own terms." He'd understood immediately. "Then we'll walk through it together." The night of the gala, I stood in my bedroom. My bedroom, that I paid for with money I'd earned, wearing a dress I'd chosen myself. Deep burgundy, elegant but not extravagant. My natural hair was styled in twists that had taken 2 hours and looked effortlessly beautiful. Simple gold earrings, a gift from Keisha, who'd cried when I'd told her about the business, and comfortable heels that wouldn't betray me on marble floors. I looked like myself. Not someone's wife. Not someone's target. Not someone small enough to hide. Just Naomi. Business owner. Mother. Woman who'd learned that standing still required more courage than running ever had. June arrived exactly on time, June holding the car door open. "You look strong," June said as I slid into the seat beside him. Not beautiful, not elegant, strong. It was the perfect compliment. The Celestial Grand's lobby hadn't changed. Same marble floors, same crystal chandeliers, same soaring ceilings designed to make ordinary people feel ant small. But I had changed. I stepped out of the car, and this time when I walked through those doors, I didn't calculate escape routes, didn't make myself smaller, didn't clutch anything like a lifeline. I simply walked. June beside me, not in front, not behind. Beside, equal. The marble floor stretched before us, and I counted the steps because I remembered. 32 from entrance to elevators. But this time, I wasn't running toward them. I was walking past them. Heads turned. I felt the weight of recognition, assessment, curiosity. But not judgment, not dismissal. People saw me now, really saw me, and understood that I belonged here. Not because of the man beside me, but because I'd earned my place through work, through courage, through the simple act of refusing to disappear. 32 steps, I murmured. "What?" June glanced at me. "Nothing." I smiled. "Just remembering." We crossed the lobby. My footsteps, confident in proper shoes this time, rang clear against the floor. No hospital socks. No fear. No calculating whether I could outrun someone who'd spent years learning exactly how fast I moved before he caught me. Just steady forward motion. When we reached the ballroom entrance, I paused, turned back to look at that lobby one last time. The woman who'd run through here 6 months ago would barely recognize me now. That woman had been surviving. This woman was living. "Ready?" June asked. I took his arm, not because I needed support, but because I wanted to. Ready. We stepped into the ballroom together, and I felt it settle into my bones. The absolute certainty that I would never run again. Not because I'd found someone to protect me, but because I'd finally learned to protect myself. And that made all the difference. Later that night, after the gala, after we'd returned Marcus from Mrs. Best Chen's and tucked him into bed with stories about the fancy party Mommy had attended, I stood on my small balcony overlooking the city. June had offered to stay, not in my apartment, but nearby. Just in case, he'd said. I'd told him I didn't need just in case anymore. He'd smiled, rare, genuine, and said, I know, but I'm offering anyway. Now, looking out at the lights spreading across the darkness, I understood the truth I'd been circling for months. I hadn't survived by running. I'd survived by learning when to stop, by planting my feet, by raising my head, by saying no more and meaning it with every atom of my being. The elevator that night hadn't saved me. I had saved me. June had simply given me the space to do it. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Proud of you. K. Keisha. Always knowing exactly when I needed to hear it. I typed back. Proud of me too, and for the first time in years, I meant it. Inside, Marcus mumbled in his sleep, safe and loved and unafraid. Outside, the city hummed with possibility instead of threat. And me? I was exactly where I was supposed to be, standing still, standing strong, standing